actually changed since then is that in a lot of, especially in B2B companies that are really relationship driven, a lot of the responsibility for that communication that used to live just in the brand has now moved out to the edge, moved out to the salespeople, the account teams, the success teams. And it's great because it's actually humanizing the relationship between the brand and their consumers and their customers. And content is core to that. The challenge there is different. You don't need a heavy technology platform that an entrepreneur or a salesperson can never figure out how to use. You need something very simple that they're and something very relevant that they don't have to spend a lot of time. They can easily build their brand in social and other digital channels.
And that's a wrap. The weekly wrap, ending Friday, August 14th, 2020. We're coming to you from the CONTENTTECH Content Center, as you can see right here, beautiful Los Angeles, California. And this week we're wondering, are we borrowing enough good ideas? And how we should get more from our social media partner? And how we might start to use images to increase search visibility. So let's wrap it up, shall we? Our theme this week, borrowing ideas. As B.B. King once said, I don't think anybody steals anything. All of us, we borrow. That's great music. And this is the weekly wrap. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 82 of the Weekly Wrap, our weekly play on words that play in the world this week. Well, this week, I've got a question about borrowing ideas and whether we should borrow some more. And I've got a wonderful conversation about content and social media with the wonderful Mike Orr from Grapevine 6. As always, I'm your host, Robert Rose, Chief Strategy Advisor with the Content Marketing Institute, and it's time to get this week's show underway. Are you borrowing enough good ideas? You know, we spend almost all our time in marketing trying to differentiate. It seems like everything that we create, we're trying to not sound like anyone else, have a distinct point of view, and package it like no one else has ever seen before. Now, of course, that level of differentiation is impossible in any instance, much less in marketers trying to publish content on a frequent and consistent basis. I'm reminded often of the quote from Mark Twain, who says, "There's no such thing as a new idea. It is impossible. We simply take a lot of old ideas and put them into sort of a mental kaleidoscope." But is finding that uniqueness a prerequisite for success? Do we have to find that level of differentiation? Interestingly, the answer may be no. In fact, we may be better off finding some great ideas and feeding off of those ideas in order to fuel the success of our content. Recently, 2 researchers conducted a study about how companies in emerging markets were developing more successful business models and differentiation. Interestingly, the researchers found that more successful companies in a new industry, they didn't worry so much about being different, but rather which ideas they were borrowing. They called it parallel play. Now, parallel play is a term that psychologists use to describe how young children tend to play together. If you've watched kids play together, they often sit near each other, but they play by themselves. But they pay attention to what the others are doing and often pull in ideas from the other children to help them accomplish something or have more fun. In a similar way, these researchers found that businesses that targeted new, innovative markets echoed this parallel play. They didn't see the developments from their competitors in their space as always something to avoid, to differentiate against, but rather to watch and pull some of their best ideas forward. We can learn from this parallel play in our content development too. Yes, we want to create original stories and express them in differentiating narratives, but we can also look to others in our proverbial sandbox and learn from their success as well. Some of the most successful stories ever told borrow from others. Now, let's not forget that George Lucas has told us that the original Star Wars was borrowed from an idea from Akira Kurosawa's 1958 samurai classic, The Hidden Fortress. Ridley Scott's 1979 movie Alien, the classic about a crew of spaceship wanderers being taken one by one by a murderous alien, it's almost a direct knockoff of the 1950s film It, the Terror Beyond Space. And Avatar, one of the most successful movies of all time, is almost the exact same story as Dances with Wolves or The Emerald Forest or a number of others. All of these great stories, they were borrowed. And so, what stories, what content are we borrowing? So now it's time for our interview segment, and we've got a good one for you this week. I get to talk to Mike Orr from Grapevine 6, and as the CEO of Grapevine 6, well, Mike is responsible for bringing everything together, product release after product release after product release. But as he says, his greatest asset is his ability to take good ideas and make them great. See what I did there? I wove in the theme without even getting into the theme. And anyway, before joining Grapevine 6, Mike spent several years in management consulting, so he shares a history with me there, working with some of Canada's marquee brands. He led a strategic think tank project management team at one of Canada's leading digital advertising agencies on projects, and he's won global awards and recognition for all of that work. So Mike and I talked about social media and content and, interestingly, the state of the world of influencers and personal brands. I think you're really going to like this conversation and find it really relevant with my friend, Mike Orr. Mike, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, considering where we are in the state of the world. You know, you're up there in peaceful, wonderful, joyous Toronto, Canada, and I'm here in the dumpster fire that is the United States at the moment. So I imagine you're doing much better than I.
Well, yeah, we're. It doesn't. I don't know if it matters where I am right now because the walls haven't changed. I feel like I need to change pictures on the walls to get some sort of variety now in my life.
Yeah, that's fair enough, I suppose. Yeah, it's lockdown is lockdown wherever you are, right? So what is that famous saying? It's you're either you're either locked out of the cage or you're locked in here with me, kind of thing. So it's, yeah, I guess we're all sort of in the same boat. You and I have known each other, but the audience may not know you, and so for the sake of the audience, tell us your story. Where did you come from? Where are you working now, and what are you working on?
Well, it's a long, sordid tale, but I won't do the super long version. But I think it is interesting in that we came from a similar place where I actually spent time running a digital agency as part of a integrated marketing agency. And in those days, that was probably about 10, 12 years ago, really saw the rise of content marketing and how brands were changing the way that they were engaging their audiences and really trying to create value through content and conversation. And it was really powerful. The thing that we found at the agency was that for bigger brands, it worked great, but it was a huge investment. It was a big investment on the agency side to create the content. There was the investment in the technology to deploy it, to publish it, to monitor, manage. And we had the idea for Grapevine 6 that could we make some of that technique and some of that approach to modern marketing accessible to entrepreneurs. And that was the formation of Grapevine 6. There was a lot of technology available. Social was now an accessible publishing channel for all those entrepreneurs out there like us. What's actually changed since then is that in a lot of, especially in B2B companies that are really relationship driven, a lot of the responsibility for that communication that used to live just in the brand has now moved out to the edge. It's moved out to the salespeople, the account teams, the success teams. And it's great because it's actually humanizing the relationship between the brand and their consumers and their customers. and content is core to that. The challenge there is different. You don't need a heavy technology platform that an entrepreneur or a salesperson can never figure out how to use. You need something very simple that they're and something very relevant that they don't have to spend a lot of time. They can easily build their brand in social and other digital channels. And so that's been that long journey from where content marketing was this huge movement 10 years ago. I think there's actually a second wave of that coming that's going to even be more interesting, where it moves to the edge in the relationships.
Yeah, it's funny. We're seeing some of the similar things. I mean, some of the evolution that we've seen even since COVID has been, increasing interest certainly in content marketing and developing better relationships with customers and prospective customers using content to do it. And it's interesting because a lot of it is, quite frankly, it feels like a lot of people are discovering it, right?
Discovering.
So for those of us who've been doing it for 10 years, you go, okay, really, we're going to go back to we're going back to the beginning. You know what I mean? Are you seeing some of the same things there?
Yeah, and I think, certainly in the last, 4 or 5 months, the rise and the immediacy to translate to digital communications has accelerated everything that people were on this journey for the last couple of years, really, to now figure out, how do I enable digital communication? And then how do I make it relevant? Like, how do I make it valuable and make sure that that's actually happening at the edge? Whereas before, you were hoping that, those in-person sales conversations and were actually delivering value. Now you can actually distribute the content there, and you can measure it and see, is it driving engagement? Is it actually delivering the value that you're hoping it is going to deliver? So I think it's a different flavor of that old conversation. I think a lot of on the marketing side, we're kind of saturated with technology and content, starting to diminish the returns on investment. That if you put another $1 in, you're not getting $5 back, you're getting $1.20 back. So what's the next thing? I think it's very much in the edges of the network, the sales tech stack. How do we do a lot of those same techniques, but now make them available to individuals that are trying to engage their buyers?
Yeah, we're seeing that as well, right? So the more of these, moving to the edge, the frontline workers sort of being part of that customer experience is certainly something we're seeing. Well, on that note, it actually ties really nicely into some of what I'd love to get your take on in terms of the news this week, which has to do with sort of at the edges and social media and how to make that work even better. I'd love to get your take on this. Just the news this week comes from the Harvard Business Review, of all places, and the headline that we'll link to, of course, in the show notes, will be how to get more from your social media partner. And the article opens up by saying, during the first 2 months of COVID-19, enterprise spending on social media has increased 74%, from 13% of marketing budgets in February to 23% in May of 2020. This spike, reported in a special COVID-19 edition of the CMO survey, represents a historic high for social media spending since 2009, and marketers expect it to stay at this level for the next year. Social media spending seems to be paying dividends right now. Companies reported a lift in social media's contributions to company performance, as well as other areas of the business as well. And they say, while the results may seem small, it's actually quite a big deal, because it's the first time we've seen an increase in social media's contribution since the question was first asked back in 2016. So, and the article then goes on to start talking about, how partners in social media can really help, things, and some of the usual suspects emerge, right? Put premium on trust and establish clear and ongoing communication, some of the sort of classics, if you will, of social media management. But what's your take on this and sort of the trend of social media and what you guys deal with, where sort of, moving that out to the edges of the frontline workers there?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's part of that movement that to digital communication, away from major events and all these things that we can't really invest in right now. There needs to be a place for the dollars to go, and social media always made a lot of sense because it was a personal platform. It was an opportunity to build trust. I think the we don't quite go far enough is thinking it through from, it's the marketing and agency partnering around the brand's communication with their audience, but they're not really looking to engage the employees and help them build their brands and really recognize that shift that now my job as a brand should be to support the personal brands of all my employees as they engage with their customers. And I think that's the next evolution of it, where it's back to content's important again. Like you said, everything old is new again. Social is important again. What's going to be different this time? I think it goes to trust, and we never solved that people still don't trust brands problem. We found some mechanisms to do social proof and a bunch of different tools in social to try and build that up outside of just the brand communication. But I think if we can actually get into the relationships and help those relationships deliver value, that's how we're ultimately going to build trust with between the company, which really is a bunch of people that work together to deliver value. It's not just a brand, and their clients and their customers. So we're seeing a lot of that happen. I think especially where there's a high demand for that in financial services, which is a high trust relationship, long-lived. They've been actively engaged in social because they're very personal relationships. They're investing in building those programs out and making sure that they enable all the digital communication channels that you need to deliver content to build trust in that relationship, because it's critical there. But also in B2B sales, in professional services. So the way agencies or consulting firms or other professionals engage with their clients, all of those are really built on personal relationships. And we need to find a way to take the expertise really that the agency and the marketers themselves have and enable all those employees, right? They teach them how to communicate, how to build brand, what's of value, how to engage people in a meaningful, authentic way, and not just do it at the brand level.
Do you think, one of the things that has come up around this idea for years now has been the sort of, let's call it the decline of organic reach, right? Where, through Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or, really any of the social channels, the algorithm sort of works against us as an individual, right? And so, and in many ways, social media has become a paid media platform where you have to really pay to play. Do you think, is it what we're really talking about here is the brand getting behind the individual and sort of giving them a platform to stand on that it helps them increase their organic reach? Or do you think paid plays a part of that? Or where do you think that mix comes in terms of the strategy of trying to move some of that elevation of the individual out, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. I think it is always going to be a mix. I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if you can do it in context, where I think the investment really is on creating engagement at the individual level. And then as you drive that engagement, understand where it's coming from, what are the topics or content that's driving engagement, that informs your ad strategy. So now you can go buy media on LinkedIn or Facebook in a much more informed way. And the people are expecting to see that. And it reinforces that I have a connection with you, I have a connection with the company, and I expect to see relevant promotions around that. I think that there's a balance that the social media networks are always trying to figure out around how do we drive more engagement in the platforms, which is their inventory, versus selling that inventory. And I think at this point right now, based on this shift, they have more interest than they have inventory. So their goal right now is really to drive engagement. They want you getting more value out of the platform through personal interaction, especially LinkedIn, than they are trying to bombard you with ads and monetize that right now. They have so much demand, like you said earlier, that there is a shift very much now to let's make sure that we're delivering value for the members, that they're coming back, that they're engaging with each other. They're trying to deliver on goals of community building or even, career building for LinkedIn. And that's, I think, their focus over the near term. So brands should be supporting that, and that will reinforce all of their paid, promotional.
When you're looking at sort of those companies that are trying to do this, right? Because it makes a ton of sense, right? If we start looking at brands and the way that they're utilizing at the edges, communication with customers through sales, through frontline, through the consultants, through, whoever it is that's actually out there building up personal brands as they further their business. It strikes me that there's a couple of things working in tension here, right? Which is, one, some of them, quite frankly, don't want to do it, right? They're like, they're uncomfortable with the spotlight. They don't want to be, they don't want to be shilling for the company. They want to work for the company, but they don't necessarily want to use their, sort of personal, I guess, stock, as it were, sort of talking about these things. And then from the shift to the other side, which is, and especially true these days, where you've got individuals that are mixing their content, their personal brand, which may have all kinds of different, let's call them purposes, sort of personal brand purposes, whether it be Black Lives Matter, whether it be LGBTQ, rights, whether it be climate change, whether it be, just sort of more pronounced opinions on things that the brand may not be comfortable with. Where do you start seeing brands balance those, sort of, that we're talking in a human way through our edge people, but maintaining sort of a consistency of how we're talking as an institution? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it goes to having a very, well understood brand value proposition and message and strategy. But then also taking a step back, and I think this is a general cultural shift that's happening, is that the brand cannot control the company's employees, right? The company is the sum total of its employees, and this whole idea of kind of bringing your whole self to work, and that's ultimately the people that are trusted, right? So your brand is part of that, right? It's not that they're part of your brand, it's that your brand is part of their personal brand. And that's the message that really is different in our approach, and I think some of the companies that really lead in the space, versus viewing your employees as a communication channel, right? That you're just pushing your branded content to. One of our long-term customers at SAP they internally advocate that you share 9 pieces of content from other sources before you share one piece of SAP content, because they understand that it's not about SAP. It's about the people at SAP, how smart they are, how they know how to solve your problems. And that also, you're setting up an expectation for, if I engage with those salespeople, it's not going to be a constant pitch. It's not going to be, here's everything we do, throw the kitchen sink at you, I'm always trying to sell you. It's about understanding your problems. I understand the world of problems, that I can point you to different resources and help you out. And if part of that is the solution that SAP brings, then I'll introduce that as well. But it's a component of my relationship I'm building with you, rather than the goal. So when we go to and talk to marketing departments, when they start asking us, well, first of all, how much lift can I get on my web traffic for this content? That should not be the goal, right? The goal is, how much value can you bring to the brands and the relationships and communications that are happening out there, right? That's what you should be trying to affect. And it's a shift in mindset. And it's not for every company, but it's certainly, if it's a relationship driven, considered purchase, where you're partnering with a company or a person for a longer term, you have to recognize that is where the value is being delivered and created as a company, and your brand needs to support that.
Yeah, I think you said something really important there, which is this idea that, you can't just, as a brand, as a company, you can't just push out, you can't just, sort of expect employees sort of like, here's some content, go be human with it, right? I mean, you can't, you gotta, it's as, I don't know, training is the right word, but certainly an engagement is, to your point, with SAP, they're sort of saying, listen, this is, it's less expectations and more sort of earning their trust almost to say, we want you to share this content, but we're earning our way into your ability to share this content, not necessarily, sort of saying, here's your quota, here's your tweets, make sure you're at one of every 9 is one of us. It's sort of earning our, not dissimilar from what we would do with our normal audiences and influencers.
That's right.
It's earning our way in, right?
Yep. Yeah, you want to be talking about things that engage your employees, right? If I work for SAP, I should be proud that I work for SAP. And when SAP, does something amazing, they're, distributing new vaccines. I want to talk about that because I recognize that builds up my brand, and I'm associated with a great brand more so than trying to push more people to that brand, get more impressions, and it will have that effect. But that's the secondary effect, right? The primary one is, and ultimately, there's a lot of value there, like you said, that we're maybe just rediscovering in social media and how we think about brand. We think about recruiting, which is a huge challenge, right? Employee engagement, like all of those can partly be solved by building better engagement models and using content to deliver value and educate, right? And help them build their brand, see the value in it from their point of view. Is ultimately, I think, what needs to change. And then marketing, instead of bringing the answer, is bringing the skill set, right? The education around how do you deal with, sensitive topics? How do you, communicate to even a small audience? It's an audience, it's a public forum. What are the practices? What's okay? What's not? How do you associate with us? How do you deal with issues as they come up? Because in our business, we work a lot with regulated markets, which adds another level of challenge because now it's electronic communications. And so we have to bring in some partners that deal with how do you do security and compliance supervision at scale. Some bigger challenges when you distribute this out to tens of thousands of financial advisors. But you want to think about that even if you're not regulated. There's risk. There's huge reward, but there's still risk, and you need to answer those questions and start educating the people that are going to be engaged.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think it's one of the things that so many companies lack these days. And quite frankly, we could use it as on the consumer side too, which is just, we were taught in school, for those of us that are old enough to remember this, we were given civics lessons on how to sort of behave in society and how to sort of take responsibility and do things and sort of, work with the cultures around us. And it's sort of, nobody ever gets that in social media, right? It's not, you just sort of thrown in there and good luck, right? I hope it goes well. And for some, it goes really well. And for some, not so much, so it feels like, companies could really take a lesson here and say, we can take some level of responsibility to help our employees really, not just with helping us market ourselves better, but quite frankly, helping them be better, social media citizens.
Yeah, and I think it extends beyond social. It's a movement towards all digital communication. A lot of it was, if we weren't sitting in the room listening to them do a sales pitch or have a client conversation, we couldn't really be responsible. But now we're starting to see systems that are coming out to, again, deliver value to the end user, record the sales conversation and analyze it using AI to figure out, what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Or the content that you're sharing, is that working or not working? How to change your approach. And I think now that we have the ability to access those, it is there's maybe an oversight component there that maybe gets a little big brotherish, but there is an opportunity there if you approach it the right way that I'm going to help you be more successful as part of this company, right? Because those are the people that stay and add a lot of value.
Yeah. Well, my friend, we could sit and talk about this all day. I love going down because we would quickly get into philosophy and sort of, all sorts of things.
We've almost solved all the problems.
But in the interest of time, I would love to have you tell people where can they connect with you, your company, all the things that you're doing, and make sure to get more information about you. Where are you online, and where can people connect?
So it's Mike Orr. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my primary business relationship platform. So connect with me there. And also the company Grapevine 6, we make a platform for sales and relationship people to be able to publish content. We also offer that for free. So a little bit limited in the capabilities, but you can find relevant content, publish it to your social networks, and kind of get started on that journey. If you're trying to change careers or you just want to get a bit more engaged in social, there is you can sign up there for free as well.
Fantastic. I love it. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Robert.
Now it's time for the segment of the show to actually go look for the 11 billionth time, the fourth time, the first time at an article that we've published recently that I think you're going to get a lot of usefulness out of. And it's a good one this week. It's from maybe end of last year, 2019. It's from Ann Smarty, and it's all about images and search. And as Ann opens up in this article, she says, is your content ready for the increasingly visual results on Google? So as Google shifts to more mobile search, to visual search, images, video, etc., visibility is crucial, she says. More and more search results feature an image along with the meta description. She then goes on to describe some really step-by-step great ideas that you can borrow for how you can start to think about imagery when you're thinking about creating content and creating SEO for your brand. So definitely go check it out. It's a wonderful, wonderful article and just some really great and practical tips that you can certainly take for your own. And well, that's it. That's a wrap of episode number 82. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all taking care of each other. I hope you're all wearing a mask. Let's get through this, folks. I want to get done with all of this, and that would just speed things up. So take care of each other, will you? Get out there, wear a mask, just wear one. I'm grateful that you've all taken 35 minutes out of your day to listen or to watch the show. I'm truly grateful for all of you out there, and I hope you're digging it. If you are, hashtag us up, won't you? Help us share the word out there. Hashtag us Weekly Wrap on social media. Help us get the word out. And also, obviously, let us know news items, interview people that we would be good to interview, anything you'd like to see in the show. We'd love to hear it. All of that stuff is just fair game there. And if you hate the show, like you're not liking it at all, like you stumbled onto this on YouTube or somehow you stumbled onto it in the podcatcher or something like that, well, if you hate it, in the immortal words of Barry Manilow, even now, when I have come so far, I wonder where you are. I wonder why it's still hard without you. Even now, when I come shining through, I swear I think of you and how I wish you knew, even now. But for now, borrowed ideas, borrowed stories. Success can come from borrowing the right ideas. However, the key to success with all of these borrowed stories is not that they borrowed from a proven template or copied a template. No. Very much like what the researchers found in the parallel play of business differentiation, the original ideas here were often failures or often modest successes in their time. Rather, successful idea borrowing isn't trying to duplicate an old idea. It's taking a mix of ideas and twisting them and turning them into something new. And that can be particularly helpful in a space like the creation of content marketing, where the rules and the horizons still aren't clear. That's what Twain meant by the mental kaleidoscope. We twist and turn these ideas into something new and beautiful. And as he said, make new combinations indefinitely. But it's still the same old pieces of colored glass that has been used throughout the ages. So, if you're stumped, look around you. There might be some colored glass laying next to you. You might just find something really interesting in that kid playing next to you. It's your story, folks. Tell it well. We'll see you next week on the Weekly Wrap.